Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322. In this video we'll showcase the lap times, top speeds and race tiers of all vehicles from the GTA 5 Agents of Sabotage update, including all day 1 and drip feed cars. If you want to see all vehicles from all classes as well as more background on this testing as a whole, check the original testing videos in the playlist linked in the description, and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on future testing of new vehicles added to GTA 5 and beyond. So the first thing to do is a quick mention of the Postlude and Kanjo SJ, since they became available to use in tuner class races fully custom, where previously they were only available stock. Not that you'd want to use them since they're at the bottom of the class, but either way they are now usable fully custom as they always should have been. So this video serves as an update to the 2024 Sports Classics, Sedans and Off-Roads videos, in addition to the 2024 Tuners and HSW subclass videos, and will sit above them in the testing playlist as we had new cars from each of those classes released in the Agents of Sabotage DLC. This video will allow you to see where these new vehicles place within those original class videos when you watch those 2024 videos. For example, you can compare the lap time, top speed, class position and tier of the Firebolt here with the vehicles from around the same area in the 2024 off-road testing video, which showcases all cars from that class except the new edition shown here, alongside any other DLC update videos which will also feature at the top of the testing playlist. So I remember saying for bottom dollar bounties last year that it was probably one of the best updates for cars from a handling perspective, and while that good handling and nice to drive cars has continued in this update, it is starting to get just a little bit boring that every single car that we get these days is basically just a sports car with loads of grip regardless of the class that it's in. The Firebolt ASP in off-roads, Chavos here in sedans, Uranus Loz Speed in sports classics, which finally dethroned the Turismo Classic at the top of the class after 8 years, for non-HSW cars anyway, they all just feel like sports cars. Just like the Dominator FX in Muscle from the last DLC, there's no real distinction anymore between classes. Gone are the days where sports classics, or really any class, had cars with unique handling. The Monroe with its bad brakes, Z-Type with massive top speed, front-wheel drive Pagani, Casco, Stinger, Coquet Classic, all unique in the way that they drove, but even as the cars got quicker with the Infernus, Cheetah, Rapid GT and the Turismo Classic, alongside the Retinues, the Ardent, cars still felt unique and in some cases a challenge to drive fast. Now everything is just so easy. The Uranus Loz Speed is an easy car to drive. Very smooth, very grippy, and essentially just another drab sports car in terms of handling. It's no wonder it beat out the relatively more difficult Turismo Classic to take the top spot, despite the former's top speed advantage. The same is true of the Jester RR widebody, which is actually usable in tuner races and takes the top spot there for lap time, which alongside the Chavos and sedans means that's 3 classes that have a new number 1, and they're all just easy to drive grippy cars. But it almost seems the same for every class now. Most new cars just aren't very interesting to drive. They're a damn sight better than the dark days of advanced handling flags, and sure, they're all nice to drive, but when every class has cars that handle just the same, you lose any distinction between classes or even cars themselves. The newest edition of the Corvette D5 is another perfect example. It's nice and easy to drive with a really decent top speed, and it puts it 1/1000th of a second behind the Envisage to become the bottom ranked car in the B tier of sports, but right on a similar pace to those others in a tier where 4/10ths of a second now separates 8 cars. It is also, by the way, 3 seconds per lap faster than the Coquette D10, while also having a 0.25 mph higher top speed. The HSW Firebolt ASP takes the top spot not in lap time this time, but it was very close to the Monstrosity. It takes the top spot for off-roads in top speed. But obviously the Monstrosity and the Firebolt, they're both just very grippy vehicles that don't really make much sense when you think about, you know, the classic off-road kind of vehicles that we've had over time. Very quick car, the Firebolt, sort of on pace with the Monstrosity, very grippy, but again, at 1 minute lap time, you've got to be putting in some really good performance in terms of handling to even get a 1 minute lap time for an off-roader, whether it's a pickup truck or whatever. The Banshee GTS has a massive top speed just on its own without any HSW upgrades. It actually takes over the top spot for the highest top speed for any non-HSW car, beating the previous best of the Weevil Custom, which previously beat out the Pariah. It seems like every car these days has to be the top of something. We used to get that periodically over the years, but now there's always something that a new car is best at, which, I don't know, the power creep is getting even more obvious. And that is really brought into close focus with the Banshee GTS HSW version, because that top speed is something else. It's the first car ever to break 170 miles per hour, and unlike the previous highest top speed car of the Italian GTO Stinger TT, the Banshee GTS is actually nice to drive. You can actually control it. It can't quite match the Niobe or the Lacroix for lap time at the top of sports, or indeed towards the top of HSW, but its top speed does keep it in that top tier at least to provide some interesting races if it can utilise it based on the track. But the same is true of the HSW Banshee GTS as everything else I talked about earlier. Its big grip just makes it a breeze to drive despite that huge top speed. It's 20 miles per hour faster than the old regular Banshee with its HSW upgrade, but it's so much easier to handle, despite having a much higher top speed where you would consider that would make it more difficult. We actually raced it in the snow last year, this is the GTS I'm talking about, and it wasn't anywhere near as interesting or as challenging to drive in the snow as I thought it would be, given that crazy top speed and the crazy power that it has. I was expecting it to be a real challenge to be able to get around in the snowy, low grip conditions, but it just wasn't. It's almost like everything added these days is just put on easy mode, where even if you go beyond the limits of traction, you're never truly punished much for it. It's just so easy to collect it up and keep going. I kind of miss the days of things like the Dominator, Gauntlet and Blade defining the muscle class, or the Z-Type, Monroe and Pigalle defining what it meant to be a sports classic. Everything now, even off-roads, SUVs, coupes, are all just big grip, smooth handling sports cars. That's how they feel. They're nice to drive for sure, you know, they're great, they're nice in terms of you're not going to have a bad experience like an advanced handling flag car from the past, for example. But there's so many of them now that they all just feel the same, and it's just kind of boring, especially when the top cars in every single class have all of those same characteristics, so there's no variation anymore. A lot of the classes might be somewhat balanced at the top between a few cars, but not in a really interesting way. It's more just a consequence of all cars now having lots of grip and power, so they perform similarly. The Tuners class, for example, it had 4 cars at the top of the class previously, separated by 0.2 of a second, each with their own unique strengths and weaknesses. The high grip Vector, the big acceleration Calico, the big top speed Growler, and the all-rounder but quite light and easy to push around Sultan. Now we've got the Jester RR, which goes 0.4 of a second quicker than all of them on its own, and is another boring, easy to drive, grippy car ruining a class. The fact that not a single car from this DLC gets a lap time worse than a 105, which is even now a relatively respectable mid-table sports car lap time, says it all really about the lack of uniqueness in these cars these days. You know, they're all nice to drive, but almost instantly forgettable unless they really break things like the Banshee GTS's top speed. And I think in a way a lot of these new tops of the classes are a little bit, it's a bit of a shame, for example, seeing this big grip sports car Uranus Low Speed dethrone a really interesting Turismo Classic, Cheetah Classic, Ardent top of the sports classic class, because it's just the same old story again. But that's everything for this video. Please consider supporting on Patreon or become a YouTube member if you want to support this work and get some extra perks for doing so, such as early access to videos and other testing results. And remember to read the description for more info, comment with your thoughts, like the video if you enjoyed or found it helpful, and subscribe for more. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.